Hey guys, going to do another old school video for today at request, and actually I kind of got a fever for it right now. So I'm playing blue-red counterburn essentially, but this is a more controlling version of the list. I think it has one too many lands. I just recently got done putting it together. So obvious play here. We basically just have a very controlling hand. I could have gone for a turn 1 walk off of Lotus with Counterspell backup, but as it stands right now, I kind of want to get out of these lands, and I have 2 counterspells to hopefully back up that line of play. So I play the Mountain out in hopes that it'll show that, like, hey, I have a fire, or I have a lightning bolt, or psionic blast, as the case may be now. But it also allows me to hold up counterspell. But this Mishra's Factory could be chipping away at me, but he is not going to, probably wisely, because he doesn't want to. Have it get blown up by a lightning bolt. I do use the Lotus there because I kind of want to feign that I have. I want to be able to use my counter magic effectively, essentially. I assume he probably has some number of Red Elemental Blast in his board, which means that Serendib is going to go down in value because we appear to be in the mirror match. I go for a Wheel of Fortune here. He casts Counterspell. I re-counterspell his Counterspell, and he lightning bolts my face. We draw another island and leave up Ancestral Recall here. Opponent plays out a Serendib Efreet. I actually don't go for the Ancestral Recall there because I do have a Mana Drain in hand, and I figured that he's on a counterspell when he leaves up 2 lands. I do go ahead and Mana Drain his Mana Drain, casting the Ancestral, or resolving the Ancestral, as opposed to having done it on his end step. Attacking for 3. And at this point, essentially Serendib Efreet and Mishra's Factory are kind of similar, with the exception of Mishra's Factory is less efficient, because with me taking 1 damage turn, Mishra's Factory, is essentially complementing 3 damage to 3 damage each turn. But I do have this bolt at this point to kind of hold it back, and or my own factory. I don't want to just dump a Brain Geyser into open mana, so I don't do it here. Opponent has a main deck Control Magic, which I'm a little shocked by because I don't tend to run it myself. What I end up doing here is going for a Demonic Tutor to find Psionic Blast, and I expect that, this is... what I do is I put both these on the stack and tell him, hey, choose. He actually doesn't have the counterspell, so he's bluffing it. And here he just goes for an all-in attack, an attack with his Mishra's Factory and Time Walks after I have drawn back up to 7. He resolves a Disrupting Scepter, forces me to discard. I get rid of the island because I'd rather resolve my own Mishra's Factory, draw into a Time Walk, which is an extremely good draw here, and am able to go ahead and burn my opponent with 2 bolts, and then wheel, and on my wheel turn, go into a full grip of 7. Which gives me a pretty easy win. I just lightning bolt and then finish my opponent off here. So Time Walk plus draw 7s. No one ever said they were not powerful when combined together. Game 2, I believe sideboard in our 3 Red Elemental Blasts and nothing else. I don't really have a good answer to Control Magic other than bringing in my own, but I don't, because I don't think Control Magic is really good in this matchup. I think he runs probably five threats that I can use it on. He Chain Lightning's there to try to stop me from getting value on it. I go ahead and Shatter on his upkeep because I want to get hit the counterspell out of his hand. At this point, I end up going for Psionic Blast, but he has Red Elemental Blast, unfortunately, so we end up losing our Blast. We draw our own Red Elemental Blast. I go ahead and just Red Elemental Blast this, and then attack, figuring this is going to get Lightning Bolted. It does. He Lightning Bolts down to 1 card, though, at a minimum. I draw a Counterspell, so my draw's been a little hinky this game because we're a 2-color deck and we don't have the ability to cast all of the Counterspells I've got. I briefly consider casting Time Twister, but it seems really, really bad here because my opponent has it for 1, and they're some more permanents than we are. They resolve a Soul Ring and a Disrupting Scepter. I would actually rather have them resolve their own Time Walk as opposed to allowing me to resolve it, because it just means I don't have to use the mana. I do draw pretty well here, though. End up going for a Serendib Efreet and attempt to Time Walk with Red Elemental Blast backup, but they have their own Red Elemental Blast. I cannot counter the Red Elemental Blast, so I have to say go to my opponent on 4 cards. They Red Elemental Blast my Serendib Efreet, then initiate an attack with their Mishra's Factory. I discard my Badlands, which is a singleton card in the deck. Well, there's a singleton Badlands and Underground Sea to enable me to cast a singleton black card, which is Demonic Tutor in the deck, which you saw in the first game. We take 1 there. End up going for an attack. So my thinking is here, like, I have Bolt, and I have Reb. They're drawing off the top of their deck. So unless they drew a counterspell specifically, if they try to attack with the factory, then I can Bolt it. I'm going to discard the Reb here and keep the Bolt because I think Bolt's more relevant for what's on board as opposed to what could be played. But unfortunately, they drew into the counterspell off the top of their deck on the 1 card they have. And what's a very close game, unfortunately, ends here. There were many draws that could have gotten it for them, though. Any burn or like a Serendip Efreet would have been probably good enough. But that ends the game right there. And we go to game 3. No change to board plan. I am still on the Red Elemental Blast plan here. Just 4 of them. Well, there's 1 main deck and then 3 in the board. But we'll do the deck tech after this. So, opponent plays Volcanic Island. I could have gone for an island turn 1 to, if I top deck Counterspell, it allows me to cast it. But I actually don't here. I actually don't again. I end up trying to resolve this Serendip Efreet and figure that I'm going to be able to get around whatever he has, in this case Mana Drain with the Red Elemental Blast. I do so. My opponent Red Elemental Blast my Serendip, which is fine. I think the amount of Red Elemental Blasts that are drawn in this mirror match of sorts is going to be deterministic of who wins or who loses. So I don't know if he has Reb or not, but I have to act like he doesn't and go ahead and discard this island to draw the Reb. It could have been more proper to draw to discard the Chain Lightning there, but I kind of like having the burn. Opponent goes ahead and recalls himself, draws back into Red Elemental Blast and Serendip Jin, discarding Island and Counterspell. I go ahead and resolve my own Serendip Efreet and figure that I'm probably going to have to 2-for-1 myself on his Serendip Jin on the following turn. Take 1 here. I opt to see if I can go for it. Well, correction, I just burn this thing out. Maybe a smarter line of play would have been to attack, and if he blocks it, allow the damage to happen, and then just use 1 bolt on it, because I know my Serendip's dead anyways. But I kind of wanted to get the Red Elemental Blast out of their hand, because I think Red Elemental Blast is very crucial in the matchup. I draw pretty well there and get Serendip Jin, kind of punishing my earlier line of keeping Chain Lightning, but Chain Lightning was actually extremely relevant there, because Psionic Blast wouldn't have done it. They cast out their own Serendip Jin here. I go ahead and Psionic Blast it. Draw to a counterspell. Still pretty embarrassing because I don't have that island. But again, if I hadn't had Chain Lightning, then I wouldn't have been able to get rid of their Serendip Jin and probably lost the game. So I think in retrospect, it probably was the right line of play. I go ahead and get rid of the City of Brass there. I attack for 5, put him to 11. I actually fireball for 1 here because it puts him on a 2-turn clock as opposed to a 2-turn clock. My mana situation is going to continue to get worse and worse, and I have the counterspell in hand. So I want to be able to cast that on the following turn. Draw into a Lightning Bolt, which is a good draw because it allows me to keep the Mishra's Factory off my back. Mishra's Factory is actually very problematic there because if it puts me down to 5, then he could have any burn draw that just puts me to dead. Because on the following turn, I have to take 3 off my Serendip Jin due to the fact that I only have islands remaining. So I'm taking 3 down to 4 plus 2 off the Mishra's Factory if I don't have Bolt to kill it. So, I think we played this as tight as we could, and it was actually a pretty interesting mirror match in Old School. I wouldn't say we're quite a mirror match, but, it appears fairly close. I have to see his land counts, vice mine. So, let's go to a quick deck tech on this deck. I don't think it's perfectly tuned. This is a weird blue-red burn version. Not this. This is the deck. URCounterBurn right here. So it is a 23-land deck with an additional Black Lotus, Ruby, and Sapphire, plus Soul Ring. What makes the deck a little more unique is that it runs Badlands and Underground Sea to run Demonic Tutor. Now, what my thinking had been, and I probably need to continue to relook the sideboard, is that I have a lot of interesting options that kind of hose certain decks. Like Smoke is very good against black, like any deck that is going to try to horizontally outgrow you. Blood Moon, just great versus certain decks, but I'm actually not running it main. Earthquake, great versus certain decks. Shatterstorm, great. And then Control Magic, pretty great. The rest of the sideboard cards are kind of like cards that we want to go up to 4 of because they're just, so essential to keeping us alive in certain matchups. We are running 2 Serendip Djinns, which is kind of a brave move, but it's pretty crucial to our plan because Serendip Djinn I've just found is huge, and you saw it kind of just I rode on the back of this thing just to win that last game. Singleton Fireball, Geyser plus Recall. So this build is a little more controlling, and the concept behind it was that it would play out more like Pedbun Oath, if you will, than it would like URCounterBurn. So the primary plan of the deck is just to life your opponent as fast as you can with stuff like Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, Serendip Djinn, Psionic Blast, and Ifrits. Then you have a Fireball, Miser's Fireball in here, if need be, for the horizontal expand style decks. Singleton Reb as well, because old school is about blue cards, generally speaking. When it's not, it can come out. But the idea is that it kind of plays out like an aggro control deck, but it also has some like prison options in the sideboard that Demonic Tutor enables. And even main deck, Demonic Tutor is not horrible. The one thing that it kind of does allow is our mana has to be a little more greedy, so I don't like Blood Moon as much main. So the deck's kind of in an odd place. It's maybe a little too all over the place. I don't know. But I do like having the Demonic Tutor for some of the hosing options that we have in the sideboard. One thing you'll note we're not playing right now that we probably should be is a singleton copy or maybe double copy of Energy Flux. The reason I kind of like this, the nature of this like build a little more, is that it's more flexible. It's not going to be as great as like a URCounterBurn deck is typically going to be in the format against what it's good at, but it's going to have more game against more things than URCounterBurn does, because URCounterBurn is bad against certain things. One of the biggest issues with it is that it has issues removing large creatures. Creatures with 4 toughness become difficult unless they're blue creatures. You have Psionic Blast for that, but when you're Psionic, like if you have to face a card like Urnum Djinn, that card's problematic because without 2-for-1ing ourselves, we can't remove it. As you saw, like even Serendip Djinn, if we don't have the requisite Red Elemental Blast, is problematic because we have to spend 2 or more cards on it, which we did in that last game, so we could finally resolve our own. But the idea is that it has, like 90% solution of what the UR deck is good against, typically, and then it runs Demonic Tutor so that it can sideboard into some of these more hateful options that are just good against certain things. Smoke, I'm not sure if it's the best card for the deck, but I kind of want to try it out because the card's very interesting, and I think, if there is like a horizontal style grow deck, it could be very good in that matchup, because typically speaking, although we do have some creatures in this deck, we're really only going to be winning with like 1 or 2 creatures. Like if we resolve 1 Serendip Djinn, we're going to intend on riding that to victory, or like 1 Serendip Ifrit. Typically speaking, you're only going to be like winning with 1 creature and then using your burn to kind of supplement that and ride that 1 critter to victory. But this is the deck. Like I said, I think it's probably 1 to 2 lands too heavy right now. Another interesting thing about it has 2 main deck shatters. Another problem with blue-red is that, typically speaking, it's going to have issues with artifacts. And this version specifically, the creature threats it's running are all Arabian Nights cards. So, if someone does resolve, like they're not generally going to main deck, but if someone resolves a City in a Bottle, you can have an issue with that. That's why we see the Artifact Blasts in the sideboard, because I think you want to get City in a Bottle upon or during resolution as opposed to allowing it to resolve. We have a 3rd Shatter and then Shatter Storm as well, obviously, which are all kind of like supplementing the Demonic Tutor package that we have inside this blue-red burn deck. So, fairly interesting deck. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck tech and the games that we played against Sensei Rob, and take care and enjoy. Later now, guys.